Morning, folks. So, today was another day where we were just kind of busy moving stuff around and doing this and doing that, and nothing to show. I didn't really have anything, and our internet was out for most of the day too, and finally come on, I don't know, an hour or so ago. And I was looking, trying to figure out what the heck I was gonna have on here, and I was looking on that marketplace thing on the computer, which, like I say, I don't look at Facebook hardly ever. And there was something on there that was on a while back. I wanted to see if it was still there or not. And up pops a message from a fella named Dennis that comments on here quite a bit. Got to visiting with him, and turns out we know some of the same people. And anyway, he gave me the idea to show off my old rifle here. This is a Whitney Kennedy carbine. It's a saddle ring carbine. Let's see, I had a thing on here. They didn't make a lot of them in saddle ring. The overall, they had two different size frames for this gun. They had one that would fire big old 4570s, and then this one fires a little 4440, almost a pistol round. Back then it was a rifle round though. It says that this rifle was manufactured between 1879 and 1886, and it was one of only an estimated 1,000 saddle ring carbines, most of which were exported to Central and South America. Billy the Kid was supposed to have had one of these. The picture, the real famous picture of him that is for sure him, there's several they say are probably him, he had one of these, which is a 1873 Winchester. Eli Whitney is the fella that invented this rifle. He invented the cotton gin also, and I got a little bit of stuff here on all this. I'll play for you here in a second that tells you kind of the history behind it. Winchester was really well known for buying up the competition and then closing down the factory, and that's what he ended up doing with the Whitney rifles. The Whitney rifle was really ahead of its time. It's a comparably pretty strong action, and like I say, it was the first lever gun that would chamber the 4570, and it actually even had a 5095 express round, the biggest one they had. And Winchester, they were mostly these small cartridges, 4440, 3840, 3220, 2520. I think that's it in the 73. But what really kind of killed this one as far as competition is it has a very long lever throw. The lever, it comes clear back, clear up to there. I don't know, hopefully you can see that. Way far forward, which would make it a very slow and kind of awkward rifle. This one, the 73, maybe at the same time, it's a lot shorter lever throw. It's hinged right here, so it's less cumbersome. This one, the Whitney, look at the way this works. It's way out here. It has a loading gate on it, which was kind of early for its time. Like I say, saddle ring carbine. This gun, the way a lot of those were carried was not in a scabbard. The saddle ring was meant, for the saddle, And a lot of times what they would do is they would just run a leather thong through that ring and then hang the rifle over the saddle of the horse, and without a scabbard at all. And it would kind of bounce around. You'd usually tuck the barrel under a strap on the breast collar or something like that. This one, I think, was carried that way quite a bit, because this side of the rifle, it doesn't have heavy pitting, but it has some pitting, especially on the barrel. I don't know, it's so dark in here you probably can't see that. And on this side, there is none of that. It's smooth and shiny. There's no pitting at all. The barrel inside of this rifle, it looks like a mirror. Somebody didn't take the greatest care of the outside of the gun, but the inside, where it counts, they took really good care of it. I've never shot a deer with this gun. I'd kind of like to. I did carry it a few years hunting, but I never did get anything. Might even try taking this a few times this season, which is coming up fast. Deer season opens on the 10th. And then this rifle and some of the others has this little trap door in the butt for a cleaning rod. That opens up. I don't think I got anything in there. I don't. But there's a little brass sliding thing on there to put a cleaning rod into. Most of the Winchesters had that also. Then it has this sight. It's standard for 100 yards. You got a hole here that turns into a peep, and that's, on some of them, are 200 yards, and the top one's 300 yards. On this gun, I'd have to shoot it to find out just where it comes out at. But when you're elevated clear up to here, shooting at stuff, it's kind of a shoot and hope you hit something type of deal. But anyway, pretty neat old gun. And not a very common one. Like I say, the total this company made was about $23,000, but in the saddle ring carbines like this one, they only made about $4,000. So anyway, here's a little bit of what I found out about it.
The Whitney Kennedy Lever Action Rifles. The Whitney Burgess and Whitney Kennedy Lever Action Rifles are some of the lesser-known arms of America's Wild West history. All were based on design work by Andrew Burgess, one of the nation's most influential firearms designers. After his creation of the cotton gin, Eli Whitney Jr., aka Eli Whitney II, moved on to becoming an arms manufacturer. Whitney purchased the land for his Whitneyville Arms Factory in 1798, and it took 10 years to get it built and fully operational. Whitney had a contract to manufacture muskets for the U.S. government, and this financed his establishment of Whitneyville. Whitney's son Eli Whitney Jr., aka Eli Whitney III, took over the family business when he turned 21 years of age in 1841. Gun designer Andrew Burgess approached Eli Whitney Jr. in the late 1870s with a view to making 2,000 lever-action rifles of his design, some of which he wanted to submit to the U.S. Army for trial. These rifles were made but failed their government trial. The improved version became a quite popular sporting rifle and paved the way for the creation of the Whitney Kennedy rifles, which were a modification of the Burgess design done by Samuel B. Kennedy and Frank W. Tising. Approximately 23,500 Whitney Kennedy rifles were made, with production ceasing after the death of Eli Whitney and the sale of the business to Winchester in 1886. The story of the Whitney Kennedy lever-action rifles begins with a foundation laid by a man named Eli Whitney Jr., a.k.a. Eli Whitney II, and his invention of the cotton gin, i.e. cotton engine, which revolutionized the harvesting of cotton. Whitney's invention of the cotton gin revolutionized cotton production and in theory should have provided Whitney with substantial income. This promise proved to be a double-edged sword, as the Whitney's cotton gin was such a good invention that it was widely copied. Eli Whitney and his business partner Phineas Miller applied for a patent on the cotton gin on October 28, 1793. and duly received their patent on March 14, 1794. This patent was however not validated until 1807. Whitney and Miller did not originally want to sell cotton gins or licenses to manufacture them. Instead, they wanted growers to come to them with their cotton crop, and Whitney and Miller would use their cotton gins to do the separation of cotton lint from seeds for them. Suffice to say that the cotton growers were not at all impressed with that idea. The cotton gin was a simple design and easy to make, and some people were able to improve on his original design, so Whitney's patents were widely infringed. Whitney set about using legal action to enforce his patents, but this proved to be expensive and long-winded. So Eli Whitney needed another business in which to develop and prosper. It was this need that saw him enter the firearms making business in 1798 when he was awarded a U.S. government contract to make 10,000 to 15,000 muskets for them. The idea for the use of mass production techniques to make this consignment of muskets most likely came from the Secretary of the Treasury Oliver Wolcott Jr., who sent Whitney a pamphlet from overseas about arms production methods. Thomas Jefferson had visited France in 1795 and had visited the musket workshop of Honoré Blanc, where they made gauged parts by precision machines. He had brought back information about this to the United States. At the time of taking on the government contract for muskets, Whitney did not have a suitable factory with which to fulfill it. He purchased a site for a production facility on September 17, 1798. This site was located on the Mill River in New Haven County, Connecticut, and Whitney's first order of business was to build the arms factory and also the accommodation for workers. The township was named Whitneyville, and it would take 10 years for it to be constructed, staff to be employed and trained, production line brought into action, and the ordered muskets to be made and delivered. Inspired by the pamphlet he had been given, Whitney worked to implement a mass production system at his arms factory with the idea that the use of specialized jigs and training the workers in the making of a specific part or small group of parts would result in the parts for each musket being interchangeable. It would take time for this to be fully implemented, but it was done in the years prior to Eli Whitney's passing in 1825. The leadership of the arms business was taken over by his nephews, and later in 1841 by his son Eli Whitney III, aka Eli Whitney Jr., who was born in 1820, only 5 years before his father's death. Eli Whitney III was responsible for the restructuring of the family business as a corporation named the Whitney Arms Company in 1863. The Whitney Burgess lever-action rifle. It would be Eli Whitney III who would team up with Andrew Burgess to create first the Whitney Burgess lever-action rifle, and then the commercially successful Whitney Kennedy lever-action rifle. Andrew Burgess, an accomplished firearms inventor, approached Eli Whitney III in the late 1870s with a view to a cooperative project to create 2,000 lever-action repeating rifles to submit for U.S. government trials. An agreement was reached and the Whitneyville Arms Factory was set up for the production run. At the time these rifles were entering production, the Burgess design was at a quite complete stage, but development work was still necessary to perfect the arm. The rifles were made in the then U.S. Army standard caliber of .45 to .70 and were the first lever-action rifles to be chambered for such a powerful cartridge. So these rifles were well ahead of Winchester's lever actions, which were chambered for much lower-powered revolver cartridges. For the military trial, 2 versions of the rifle were made: a short cavalry carbine fitted with a 22-inch barrel and 7-round magazine, and a full-size musket fitted with a 28-inch barrel and 9-round magazine. Burgess' first design required top-loading of the 7-round tubular magazine of the carbine. This was a simple design and no doubt done in an effort to ensure reliability. But it was also awkward to load, in all likelihood even more awkward to load with gloves on, and cavalry troopers would normally be wearing gloves. It was therefore deemed preferable to modify the design to include a side-loading gate in rifles so fitted submitted for the government trials. Although the history is not well documented, it would seem that the Burgess rifles as submitted were found to jam, with the potential for a cartridge to get wedged under the elevator, rendering the rifle unusable. So the Burgess rifle as submitted failed the government trial. Burgess did not only make rifles for the military trials, but his 2,000 rifles produced included many for commercial sale. At that time they were the only .45 to .70 lever-action repeating rifles on the market, and they turned out to be popular. Burgess was able to fix the problem that had caused the jamming in the military trials, and his commercial 45-70 rifles were noted for their smooth and reliable action. After the completion of the 2000 45-70 rifles made on the large Burgess lever-action, Whitney and Burgess came to an agreement for a new model, aimed squarely at the sporting rifle market. There were to be two action sizes: the original large action made for the 45-70 and able to accommodate other large sporting cartridges such as the 45-60, and a smaller action, made to compete with the Winchester lever action and suited to the popular 44-40. This new range of sporting rifles were to be sold under the Whitney Kennedy name, with royalty payments being made to Andrew Burgess for the use of his patents that pertained to the rifle action. These rifles actually used patents from Burgess, Tising, and Kennedy, which included the improved side-loading gate and cartridge elevator mechanisms. Production of these rifles began in 1879 and would continue until 1886, when Winchester purchased the Whitney Arms Company in 1886, the year after Eli Whitney III passed away, and shut the company down to remove them as a source of competition. These sporting rifles were made in a range of calibers common in the United States at that time. The large frame rifle was offered in 40-60, 45-60, 45-75, and 50-95 express. Of these, the 45-60 was the most popular. These rifles were offered with either a 26-inch or 28-inch barrel, and barrels could be round or octagon. Magazine capacity was 9 rounds in 45-60 with the 26-inch barrel. The small frame rifle was made in 32-20, 38-40, and 44-40, with the 44-40 model being by far the most popular and the 32-20 the most rare. These small frame rifles were offered with 20-inch, 24-inch, 26-inch, or 28-inch barrels, with the choice of either round or octagon. For the 24-inch barreled rifle in 44-40, the magazine capacity was 13 rounds. For both large and small actions, the earlier models are fitted with the graceful serpentine-style lever, while late models are normally found fitted with the finger ring-style lever, as might be found on Winchester and Marlin lever-action rifles. The Burgess-designed action was completely different to the Winchester. Whereas the Winchester used a toggle arrangement, the Burgess had a one-piece lever which incorporated the locking lug and firing pin. The lever throw is long on these rifles but notably smooth. When the action is opened by moving the lever downwards, the locking lug, which is at the top of the arm that forms the lever and internal locking action, is moved down out of engagement behind the breech block. The lever engages the breech block to move it rearwards to extract, eject the spent cartridge case and cock the hammer. Then when the lever is moved upwards to close the action, it engages the breech block to move it forward, picking up a fresh cartridge from the elevator and chambering it. As the breech block comes into its forward position, the top of the lever arm moves up behind the breech block to lock it in place. The firing pin mechanism is incorporated into that top arm of the lever, and so the rifle cannot be fired until it is in the fully locked position. The Whitney Kennedy lever-action rifle was well regarded and owned by knowledgeable users. One was apparently owned by William Bonney, aka Billy the Kid. After the success of the Whitney Burgess and Whitney Kennedy rifles, Andrew Burgess went on to involvement with Colt, and he designed the Colt lever-action rifle that precipitated the legendary gentleman's agreement that was forged between Winchester and Colt, an agreement that saw Colt not going ahead with production of their Burgess-designed lever-action rifle, and Winchester not going ahead with production of their prototype revolver. It didn't stop Colt from creating their pump-action Colt Lightning rifles, but these did not pose a serious threat to Winchester's lever-action rifles. The Whitney Burgess and Whitney Kennedy lever-action rifles were and are regarded by some as superior to the contemporary Winchester. Whether that is true or not, they were well regarded and have become a focal point for some collectors of historic lever-action rifles. As there were more than 20,000 of these rifles made, survivors tend to be able to be found, and although Eli Whitney actively discouraged customers from custom orders, there are some custom-ordered variants out there sitting in collections or waiting to be discovered in the back of gun cabinets or dealers' shelves across the United States.
Anyway, pretty neat. Hopefully you thought that was interesting. See you folks tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Bye.